Hello, my name is Sherry Adair, and I'm the owner and founder of Best Self Atlanta magazine. We are really excited to be here today to bring you a very important discussion, and that is the discussion on the new health care, what it means to you, your family, and your business. We have a great panel of experts here today to answer your questions about the Affordable Care Act, and we hope you leave here today with a lot of those questions you had answered. To help us out today and to be the MC for this event, we have Tracye Hutchins. Beginning in 2007, Tracye hosted CBS Atlanta's morning show, Better Mornings Atlanta. As of this fall, she co-anchors the CBS Atlanta News at 4, 5, 6, and 11 p.m. Tracye has 20 years of experience, including multiple years at the anchor desk at CNN Headline News. Welcome, Tracye, and now I'll hand it over to her.
Hey, good morning to you all. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As Sherry mentioned, kind of traveling through this nasty weather that we had, but so wonderful to see all your faces this morning. And I do want to thank Sherry and Best Self Magazine for inviting me out this morning. This is truly an education for me as well. Certainly a historic moment for our country. Things are changing and changing very quickly. And there's a lot of information that a lot of us just don't know about the Affordable Care Act. And hopefully this morning we can answer a lot of questions for you, hopefully dispel some rumors, and have it be a non-political event and mainly an educational event. And we do have a panel here that will address your questions. Hopefully we will be able to get to them. We will kind of expedite this process and get through things as quickly as we can to answer as many questions of yours as we can. I do want to introduce the panelists to you. From your left, on the end there, Trey, wave your hand. Trey Sibley is the director of the Division of Insurance and Financial Oversight for the Georgia Department of Insurance. Formerly, Trey practiced law at the Atlanta office of Locke Lord, LLP, concentrating his practice in insurance, regulatory, corporate, transactional, and healthcare law. At the quarterly AICP meeting, Trey gave a presentation entitled The Affordable Care Act, an Employer's Overview and Practical Implementation. Please welcome Trey. Michael Parker. Michael is a certified financial planner and senior vice president at Thrive Advisory Group, LLC. Michael advises clients in a wide range of health and welfare plans and Affordable Care Act compliance. Formerly, Michael helped to maintain the employee benefit plans for Koch Industries Incorporated and all of its subsidiaries, including Georgia Pacific and Investa. Welcome, Michael Parker, please. All right, next on the panel, we have Eric Hagland. Eric is the founder and principal executive officer of Georgia Benefits. He is also a founding principal of Digital Benefit Advisors, a division of Digital Insurance, the largest group health agency in America. He's a licensed insurance professional and a graduate of the University of Georgia's Terry School of Business. Please welcome Eric Hagland. Jeffrey Gallops, MD, is a double board certified physician and founder of Atlanta's Ear, Nose, and Throat Institute. His expertise in practice development will allow him to oversee implementation of the Affordable Care Act for his 16-location practice. Dr. Gallup is regularly called upon by his fellow physicians for his expertise in practice development, earning him a reputation as a respected business leader among his peers. Please welcome Dr. Jeffrey Gallops. And he brought his entourage along with him today.
The A-team.
Keith Daniel is a principal in the Audit and Insurance Services Group at HLB Gross Collins. He is also the firm's healthcare practice leader. Keith is a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Georgia Society of Certified Public Accountants. Please welcome Keith Daniel. All right, so we'll get right into it, panelists, and we'll start with our first question. So we're limiting it down to, certainly there are a number of things that a lot of people need to know about the Affordable Care Act, but we're calling it 3. What are the 3 things business owners need to know about the Affordable Care Act? And we will begin with Michael Parker for this one.
three of the major impacts that companies, I believe, will see on this. Number one is a lot of businesses have to some extent operated their benefits program in somewhat of a siloed type of an approach, or very much in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is there's little interaction between other departments in their business. I think that is out the door as this comes in play, because this is going to affect so many aspects of the business, i.e. your HR department, your payroll department. You're going to have more of the finance get involved in this than they ever have before. So I think that's one piece that businesses very much need to be aware of. Secondly, business owners, HR departments, and or office managers will become very much intimately involved with ERISA, with HIPAA, with high tech, a lot of these acronyms that you're not that familiar with, or at least the larger companies typically are more familiar with than the smaller business. You will be forced, because of the compliance needs and the administration needs of this healthcare law, to become very intimately involved in these aspects. And thirdly, regardless of the size of your business, there is going to be a cost to you. Now, let me put some context on that. It may not be the hard dollar penalty cost that some people have seen in the media in regards to the 4980H penalties, pay or play penalties. But the other things you're going to look at are the soft costs. It's going to take man hours to deal with the administration and compliance. It's going to take, you're looking at potentially adding staff to handle this. If you've got an HR person, or if you have an office manager wearing multiple hats, you may have to add on manpower here on this. So there are soft costs associated with this, not just the hard dollar financial impact. Resources are going to be a big cost to companies as well. And then lastly, the other cost on this, it may be that if your program essentially goes away, it may be a cost in regards to labor force. You may not be as competitive, or it may cost you more to be more competitive in the labor force. So those are three at a high level that will be a major impact on businesses moving forward.
Michael, thank you. Is there another one of our panelists? We'll also open this up to another member of our panel that would like to address this as well. Yes, so Eric.
Okay, I think everybody that has a company with less than 50 employees has probably dealt with applying for insurance for your company based on a rate, and then you found out there's 2 or 3 people in the group and the rate goes up. That's not going to be the case anymore with community rating. So for a group under 50, it is going to be easier to buy insurance. But as Michael said, the cost of insurance for, I would say, well, for all the carriers that I've talked to have said probably 85, 90, 95% of the population of America are going to pay more for their insurance this year than less. So a lot of people are expecting a rate decrease, and you're never going to see that. In fact, you'll probably see a dramatic rate increase. So there is a pro. It will be easier to buy the insurance, but it is going to come at a significant cost. That's number one for me. Your benefits are also going to change. You might have a super high deductible because you're in a good financial position, or you need your premium low because of your budgetary constraints. Well, you're going to have to fall within a required plan that the government set out, saying these are the minimums you can have in your plan, and that is going to increase your cost also. So the insurance in general is going to have caps on what your maximum out of pocket is going to be. But again, when you start capping what your out of pocket is going to be in all areas, what does that do to premium? It goes up. So again, don't expect the big rate decrease.
All right, thank you. All right, our next question is really kind of a two-parter. The law has a mandate that requires all individuals to have coverage by January 1st of 2014. Are businesses required to provide a certain type of insurance? And how are businesses penalized if they don't provide that coverage? Is there a panelist that would like to address this? Trey, would you like to address it?
Nominated, yeah, I'll take it. I think this kind of dovetails with the first question, which, the 3 things you need to know. Does the ACA apply to me? Does it apply to my employees? And what kind of plan am I going to use? Am I going to insure it, or am I going to self-fund? There are several different mechanisms you can use, and I think that's kind of a natural lead into the second question. As it relates to individuals, there's been some recent guidance that came out. Essentially, individuals in their tax return following will have to provide some sort of certification that they had minimum essential coverage. Minimum essential coverage is a qualified health plan, or it's an employer-based plan that provides minimum essential coverage, which in that instance means it's affordable and provides minimum value, and those basically mean it has an actuarial value of 60%, and the cost share is less than 9.5% of your income. For 2014, businesses are not going to be penalized if they do not provide a health plan to their employees. But if we fast forward and go to 2015, what's the fallout if an employer decides that it doesn't make sense to provide their employees with a health plan that provides minimum essential coverage? $2,000 per employee. That's basically how it works. If you do provide a health plan and it doesn't provide minimum essential coverage for one of your employees, and they go out to the exchange and they are eligible for a subsidy, then it's $3,000. And these are yearly numbers. It can be done on, I believe, a monthly basis, the penalties. But I think that's going to put small businesses particularly in a situation where they're going to have to decide what makes more sense to me. Does it make more sense to me to go the insured route, which premiums may tick up quite a bit? Can I self-fund? That would be a stop-loss policy, or maybe even setting up a captive. So those are questions that businesses are going to have to wrestle with as they kind of put the penalties that they will face in the context of making a good business decision. So it's really going to come down to which will cost me less, unless companies provide benefits for reasons other than cost. I mean, you get to encourage them, talented employees to come to your business if you provide more benefits, obviously. But I think it's definitely going to be a difficult question facing most employers, particularly in 2015 forward. So that's kind of how I'd answer that.
Okay. Eric, did you have something you wanted to add to that briefly?
Yes, individuals in 2014, you're going to pay, if you choose not to buy health insurance, you're going to pay a $95 penalty or 1% of your income, whichever is greater. In 2015, it's $325 or 2% of your income, and then in 16, it's $695 or 2.5% of your income, whichever is greater.
Yeah, and that led us to our next question. If someone, say, for an individual, if they're healthy and they decide they don't want this, Dr. Gallups will address this to you. I mean, and we see that they're going to have to pay that fine, basically. What are you looking at this point?
Well, I'm glad that Eric introduced that, because I think that's some basic information everybody needs to have. I look out at the crowd today, and we're all kind of serious, and it is serious. I'm a CEO. I run a company. We have physician employees. I'm a doctor. I take care of patients, and which immediately means I'm a 3-year-old child sitting up here with these experts. And then I'm a patient, so I deal with all aspects of healthcare. And I think we need some kind of calming force, out there. I think we need a voice of some reason about what you can expect as an individual when you go see a doc. And these guys are experts about the law and how it's going to be delivered, from a financial business aspect. But individually, I think that people are going to have to take charge of their healthcare dollar. People are going to have to make decisions. When was the last time you bought a car without asking the price? And has anybody here been to a doctor and been told exactly what it's going to cost to see that doctor, right? Come on, this is what it's about. It's going to be about, back when I was born in the 60s, you paid for almost everything. You went to a doc and, there was that trust level there. So, I think it's a great dynamic in that it's creating some change of thought about individuals and what they're going to expect from their physicians and from the system. So it's going to be a great debate that's just starting, and I could talk for hours, so I won't, but I'll leave it at that. But you're going to be responsible for your own health care dollar. It's going to be your health. It's going to be your money. It's going to be your choice.
So, Dr. Gallups, if I come to your office and I already have health insurance, how will my experience change with the Affordable Care Act? What changes?
I can't anticipate anything. When you walk in, it shouldn't change a whole lot. Not in our practice. Keep in mind we're an ear, nose, and throat specialty practice, and we're innovators in healthcare delivery because surgical procedures are very expensive, and our time is money, and we're innovators in that. So, I think that maybe you would experience that your quality of care and attention to detail may be better. There's the question, are there going to be enough doctors? Are there going to be too many doctors? Well, we don't know. We really don't know. But your experience right now, January 1, I don't think it's going to be any different.
Okay. I think a lot of people are a little nervous about that. I know I am, for sure. All right, so our next question. How may small businesses benefit from this? How may small businesses, might they be challenged? We will address this question to Michael Parker.
I think, again, this is another question that dovetails off our initial, and as kind of Eric mentioned, the community rating and their subsequent tax credits for small businesses that may be an advantage. If you have a employee base that may be a little bit older, or you've got health conditions, you may benefit from the community rating aspect, because essentially your utilization is no longer taken into account. It's limited on the community rating what factors they can account for. Some on the age, you got some on the geographic area, and then tobacco status is really it. So your past utilization is out the door, so to say. So you may have some benefits there from the community rating, and then there's some tax credits that they're also offering to some of the small businesses for those that are paying towards employee health premiums. As for the challenges, again, you get into the law itself. I think for small businesses, realistically, is very rigid, and I say that in regards to everybody, I think, is familiar, or at least has heard the terms of the metal tiers that they've got on the health plans: the bronze level, the silver level, and they pay out at certain actuarial values. So, for instance, on the bronze, they say it's got to have a minimum of a 60% actuarial value. Well, what does that mean to you out there? Essentially, it's saying that the plan's paying 60% of what the expected claims are going to be for an individual. So on average, if I go to a doctor 3 times a year, average cost for that visit is $150. So total for that year is $450. The plan has to pick up roughly 270 of that, or 60%. That's what actuarial value really sums up to be. Okay? One of the things in the exchange that you need to be aware of, the 60% actuarial value, they've built in a buffer of 2%. So a plan can be a 58 to maybe a 62% actuarial value. Well, if you get a plan that's between 63 to 67%, that's a non-compliant plan. You're stuck between these metal tiers, so there's some limits there. Also, and I'd love to get Dr. Gallup's perspective on this, is I know there's several doctors out there that are doing concierge medicine outside of the insurance umbrella. That's not going to fit into the program anymore here. So if you have where you're doing concierge medicine as an individual, you're still going to be faced with a penalty potentially. So there's some rigidness in the law, and especially in the small business arena too. You've got deductible limits that you're going to have to deal with. You've got out-of-pocket limits that are going to be lower, that are going to increase premium. So there's some rigidness in the law itself that are going to affect the small businesses.
And I wanted to ask Keith as well, you're a CPA, in terms of small business, how will this affect them in terms of their taxes?
The small business tax credit will be, I think, a fairly popular item with a lot of small employers. It'll allow small employers that offer a qualified plan to their employees to get a credit up to 50% of the premiums paid for employees up to, there's a phase out, so once you get beyond 25 employees, you don't get the credit. But it could be very helpful in offsetting the increased cost of these premiums that they're sure to see. So it'd be up to 50% of your premiums for qualified small employers and 35% for tax exempt small employers. And that's going to be a very popular program. One of the other things that I think is worth mentioning relative to tax impact is that when you come to these events, you hear a lot of people talk about the fact that they just want to hit the easy button, send people to the exchange, and be done with it. That's not so simple. There are tax implications to that as well, because when you offer an employer-sponsored group plan, those premiums are paid with pre-tax dollars. If you send someone to the exchange, they will then have to buy that coverage with after-tax dollars. So that coverage will be much more expensive to those employees. And we're advising our clients there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to this. Everyone needs to be purposeful about this, and the additional year you've been given by the deferral of the employer mandate, we're telling our clients that they need to be very proactive and purposeful in this and go ahead and engage some of these gentlemen like we have here on the panel to come in and evaluate your program and to try to map out a strategy that works for your company. It's going to be all over the board as to what will be beneficial for small employers, but there will be a lot of tax implications to this, to be sure.
So you're advising companies to really get the ball rolling now as soon as possible.
Earlier is better.
So if a business owner feels as though healthcare is just too expensive for them, what are some of their options? I'll address this to any one of the panelists who would like to answer. Yes, Eric.
Two things, and this piggybacks on the last question, really. If you get a tax credit by going to the shop to buy your insurance, and you're going to get a 50% tax credit, there are a couple things, and I don't mean to be the guy that's always throwing the bucket of water on you when you're thinking, hey, I'm going to get a lower premium here, but I've got to offset that a little bit, because you might get a lower premium because the government's going to give you a tax subsidy or tax credit when you provide insurance to a lower income group. The problem is, when you look at the premiums under community rating, if you've got a group, let's say it's a landscaping firm, and you've got 10 guys and they're making $25,000 a year, $30,000 a year, and you're going to get a 50% tax credit, that's great. But the estimated premium increase on a group of young males could be as much as 100% increase. That's a break even. So what happens is the premium went up, but then the government gave you money. Well, that's just a trading of money, shifting it to everyone else. We're going to pay that subsidy. So that's an interesting thing. But there is a definite advantage going to the shop, buying your insurance there if your employees average less than $50,000 a year, because they'll get some sort of subsidy towards that. So there is a definite advantage. As he mentioned, you can also cancel your insurance. Just say, hey, everybody, here's $200, and go buy it on your own. Obviously, the advantage to the business owner there is there's time savings. You're out of the absolutely horrendous decision-making process of what benefits am I going to offer my employees. But when you give someone $200, that $200 turns into $175 or $150 or $140, and the $200 you gave them didn't cost you $200, it cost you $220, because you have to pay FICA, FUTA, and workman's comp on it. So your cost goes up too. So there is that to deal with.
Eric, thank you. And we've heard a lot about community rating, coverage and premiums now determined by a community rating. So can we define community rating and really explain how it's different than the way insured parties used to be evaluated? Because there was a lot of talk about community rating this morning. Trey?
All right. Actually, the small group market, HIPAA came in, and essentially what most states did is they adopted a modified community rating. So the market right now is a modified community rating in Georgia, and it's about plus or minus 25%. So you get basically your manual rate, and you get rated up or down 25%. So there's a modified community rating already in place. There are more factors than are allowed under the Affordable Care Act after 2014 for the modified community rating that exists now and has existed for over 10 years. So the underwriting factors I think that were talked about were 1 to 3 age banding, 150% tobacco surcharge, and geographical rating areas. There's also if you have a family or individual policy. So basically 4 bases to rate. Community rating means everybody goes into the same bucket and you determine a rate and everybody gets charged the same rate. And so as has been talked about earlier, if you are on average sicker as an employer, your employees are sicker or older or whatever, harder to underwrite, you may benefit from being thrown into a true community rating where you're not going to be rated up 25%. If you're younger, obviously the opposite is true. So that's essentially community rating. You just go to a big average of everyone who's going to be in the small group market. Now, it's important to point out we don't have a shop exchange right now. And when I left this morning, I think Senator Cruz was still filibustering, so who knows. I think that I think I want to step back real quick to just quickly enumerate those options I was talking about because it has implications for the community rating. And that is if you have a small employer who's going to go into the small employer group, and it's 2 to 50 in Georgia, that small employer group's got to have the essential health benefits, and that's I think where you're going to see potentially some increases. Very quickly, the essential health benefits are actually, the federal government did not define them. There's 10 categories. The federal government instead benchmarked Georgia and every other state against one. It was a process, but essentially Georgia's benchmarked against a Blue Cross Blue Shield small group point of service plan, which is supplemented with pediatric vision, pediatric dental, and habilitative services. And so that the additional benefits is what might kick up the cost. But also, if you are a small employer and you have a pretty healthy young set of employees, it may make sense, and I'm sure that the professionals you deal with in your healthcare plans or internally with your HR department will decide whether or not it makes sense to go out and get a stop-loss policy and try to retain the risk yourself. And so when you do that, you take them out of the bucket of community-rated folks, right? And if they are going to, on average, be contributors, meaning they're not going to have the high claims, then that can affect your premium rates and the community rating. So there's definitely a positive feedback, not a good one, I should say, a negative feedback, that could potentially increase premiums in a community-rated small group market if people make rational choices, that I'm better off maybe self-funding and not participating in this small group area. And in Georgia, again, the small group is 2 to 50, so that conveniently stops off at the employer mandate. In 2016 forward, Georgia will default to the federal rules, which are 1 to 100. So it's a big deal, the community rating. I would say that in the small group area, however, it's not a shift away from a dramatic shift away from what existed previously. Certainly, you're reducing the underwriting factors that can be taken into place, and you are taking away the modification on the community rating. So that's not a succinct way of saying community rating.
All right, Trey, thank you.
Can I take a stab at that just
Sure.
simplistically? I'm not an insurance person, but I had this explained to me once, and it just made a lot of sense to me. Today, the way they measure and they put people in categories, they have basically 12 categories, right? And so January 1, under the new program, there'll be 3. Okay, so today they rate high risk. They'll have the high risk group up here in tier 12, and they'll have the low risk group down here in the tier 1. And when they compress, the dynamic is that the group has to gravitate towards the new mean. So the people that are on the higher end under the new program, that's the dynamic that will allow some of the higher risk groups with the older population will conceivably pay less, and the younger will have to come up. So that's what's going to drive the phenomenon that they will conceivably pay more, and that's simplistically what has occurred. And to me, that just helped me visualize how is that possible? But it's all the law of averages, right? I mean, that's really all this is. And if you get away from all the what I call legalese and that's simplistically what is occurring with the community rating.
An average. And I do want to remind the audience, in about half an hour, we'll open it up to questions from you. So if you do have some questions for the panelists, you may want to jot down. We'll be asking those questions and hopefully answering them about 30 minutes from now. And also, too, if you're active on social media, you can hashtag BestSelfACA, and everyone can join the conversation that way. All right, so when we're talking about single business owners, everyone always obviously trying to get a better rate. That's what we try and do in life. Is there something that small businesses or single owner businesses can do to get a better rate, like say maybe join a co-op or something along those lines? Any panelists that would like to address that question?
I'll do it again. I'll try to be more brief. All right. I mean, there's so many complexities. I'm trying to be concise, but I encourage you, if any of these issues you need to dig into, they're pretty complex. This one, somewhat straightforward. Co-ops, Georgia didn't have a co-op. The funding wasn't there. There was a few states that formed co-ops that were contemplated under the Affordable Care Act. As far as an association, that is... what is typically going to happen is even if you join an association, you may be able to be rated as within that association because state laws are different than federal laws. But I will say that if you choose that option, the association, and you can get a better rate by combining your experience with other similarly situated employers. The feds won't necessarily look at it that way. They're going to look at a common law employer-employee relationship. So for ERISA purposes, and potentially there's some ACA issues, but certainly for ERISA purposes, even if you choose to group yourself together with other employers, unless you are a true association, and I'm not going to bore you with how that's defined, you will have the ERISA concerns because you're going to be treated differently. In the ACA, they can, and there's guidance on this, they can look through associations and look to like you got several employers that are engaged in significantly different activities. They can look through that and rate you individually rather than as on the association level. But I would say that there's lots of moving parts potentially on this one, but there are options, and certainly people can explore them with you. But do be aware that in any event, you need to make sure that you understand the ERISA implications if you get involved in an association plan.
Troy, thank you. And I believe we addressed this earlier when we basically talked about some of the three major things that business owners and businesses needed to know about the Affordable Care Act. The soft costs and other financial issues that could arise from that. Some of the financial repercussions of the law for businesses. And Michael, I know you addressed this earlier. I mean, are there some other things that business owners really, some pitfalls possibly that they need to look out for?
Well, and again, getting back to the soft cost piece, I mean, just the sheer compliance and administration that's involved for businesses as it relates to this bill will be an added cost. Whether it's, again, you're having to bring in additional personnel or it's additional man hours that are taking business owners away from bringing in profits to their business. I mean, you're going to end up, if you have a health plan going forward, you're going to have to do monthly reporting to the IRS as part of this and to stay in compliance. You're going to have to do annual reports to CMS on your health plan that you've got. So these things, and there's data elements that are involved in these reports that have to go in. So, trying to leverage that as much as you can with either third parties or software technology is going to be advantageous. But again, there's still an added cost there. Employee communication is going to be huge. So you're sitting here as business owners and those that are intimately involved from a business perspective here, but the individual employee up under a business's umbrella, there's very few that the communication that's gone out on this has been very limited. And so you have a lot of confusion out there. So as a business, making sure that your employees understand their options and health insurance as it sits going forward and the impact there, that's going to be a huge cost, whether it's print material or anything that in regards to the employee communication. So you've got these soft costs that every business is going to have to take into account, regardless if you're 2 employees or if you're 20,000 employees.
All right, thank you.
Okay, there are a couple other soft costs too. There are about, I don't know what the actual number is, about 10 taxes that are involved in the ACA. 4 of them directly impact a business, or we like to call them a per person or a per belly button tax, because everybody has one belly button, so we can say that is per person. There are some taxes that don't impact many people. For example, if you go to a tanning salon, you're going to pay an extra tax for that. And okay, big deal, don't go to a tanning salon and you don't get that. But there are 4 other taxes that are going to impact every other person in America that has insurance, because it's a per insured tax. One of which, just alone, one of the 4 is $5.25 per belly button. Okay, so if you're single, that tax is going to be $5.25. If you're a family of 4, you're going to be paying $21 in additional, you could call it premium, but it's technically a tax that goes to the insurance company that remits it to the government. $21 a month. That's a big number, plus the others. So there are a lot of soft dollar costs, and that's where, when you take the community rating and you say, okay, we got here to here, now we're going to compress that a little bit, except what's going to happen is the compression is going to slide. So any savings, if you're in the older, sicker category, are those going to be covering the taxes, the increased benefits, etc.? Chances are probably 90% no.
And I know the panelists were talking about this a little bit earlier in terms of almost having different corporations and dividing them up so you have under 50 people. I mean, is this kind of a creative way that, he hands the mic right to Keith. Is this kind of a creative way that some corporations, some businesses are really trying to deal with the financial repercussions of the law? Is that legit? Is that legal? Can you do it?
You can do it, but it won't work. The control group rules will come into play, and so if there's a common ownership, and that's what they'll be looking at, that will not be a viable strategy. There may be some things you can do, but that in general will not get you there. We've heard people talk about employee leasing and temp employees in this. The reality is that if you own the company, whether you've divided it up into 2 or 3 entities,
It's still yours.
It's yours. And those people will all be lumped in together when they're evaluated for purposes of determining whether you have 50 employees or more. So that won't help.
Something probably you should advise against doing.
And we're telling
In the
people
long
that,
run,
yes,
it's not going to help you.
It's not going to help. No.
Okay. Keith, you can go ahead and keep the mic. We kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but what will be different for businesses this time around filing their tax returns this year? And then, for 2014 and then for 2015 as well.
This year there really won't be anything any different on your income tax return. There'll be some. They're asking that the value of group medical benefits be reflected on employees' W-2s, Box 12, Code DD, that kind of thing. So you'll see that going on, but there really won't be any big changes this year. When you're going to see the changes begin to occur, and 2014 is a transition year, and so participating in this is optional, though we're telling people that you should probably go ahead and get with the program so that you can begin to understand how to accumulate the data and how to report it and be familiar with that, so that 2015, when it really counts, it's not your first pass at it. But in leading up to 2015, there'll be forms that the Internal Revenue Service is developing, and they'll put out, and there'll be some information reporting that'll be required on the people that on your employees. And this is the information that the service will take and determine whether or not, and they'll take and part of that information will be social security numbers and that kind of thing. So they'll be taking that data and cross-referencing that back to who has applied for a tax credit on one of the exchanges, and then this is how you're going to get your love letter around April 15 saying, we've determined that you have employees that have gone to the exchange and have been paid a credit, and here is your share of that. And then there'll be a response period that they're going to allow, 30, 90-day letter, however, wherever you may fall it in that scheme of things at the time. But you'll have an opportunity to respond to that, and depending on your response, you'll either pay or negotiate your way down or out somehow of that. So that will be the big difference.
And this last question I will address to all the panelists, and I want to start with Dr. Gallups. What best advice, as a business owner, what best advice could you give to other business owners really going forward and coping and adjusting with the Affordable Care Act?
Find an expert to advise you.
Brevity.
I'm not good at that. Take it while you can get it. Right?
One thing that I would say, I think everybody feels like, I know I do, that for the last 3 years under ACA, I felt I've run a marathon, or maybe 10 continuous marathons. Right now, though, is the hard sprint to the main impact of the insurance and ACA, and you've got to pay attention. Right now, you have to pay attention. Here's a freebie for everybody. If you've not notified your employees that the marketplace is going to be open on January 1, you have until October 1st to do that. Now, the good news is the government waived the penalty. It doesn't mean you don't have to do it. If you want to bow up against the government and say, I'm not going to do it because I don't agree with it, knock yourself out, but you just drew a big target on your chest, in my opinion, so you should do that. But you have to pay attention. Our company has an ERISA attorney that works for us and sends out a newsletter every week saying, do this right now. And I got a phone call from a business owner, and he said, hey, I got this in the mail or somewhere. Do I have to do this? This was the notice. And I said, did you not read the newsletter that we sent? The same newsletter out 2 weeks in a row saying you must do that, and we're having a webinar tomorrow on the topic. And he goes, no, I don't have time to read that blank. And I picked up the phone, this was email, and I said, dude, you better start reading it because it's important. So now is the sprint. Pay attention. We all have healthcare reform fatigue. Fight through it and pay attention, or you'll get in trouble.
Michael?
Again, just to reiterate, getting in front of this sooner rather than later is the thing to do. You surround yourself with a team of experts. I mean, you've got different points of view from multiple people up here, and I can tell you, and I think everybody in here on this panel will be in agreement, this is a team effort. This is going to take the attorney. This is going to take the CPA. This is going to take your insurance broker or consultant. This is a team approach. This is a very complex law. So getting ahead of it now, not later. And I think that to some extent, several businesses, states even, have delayed thinking that in some shape, form, or fashion that this law would go away. Whether it was a Supreme Court decision, whether it was we're going to defund it, whatever it was, we're on a very short runway now. And as complex as this is, again, it's getting in front of it. Go back to one example, the summary, as Eric mentioned on the October 1 deadline. Does everyone in here know that the summary benefit of coverage 4-pagers that are supposed to have been going out? Requirement. How many people in here know the 4 counties in the state of Georgia where you have to make available a Spanish, Chinese, Navajo, or Tagalog interpretation of the law if you have an employee in that 10% threshold of that county? How many in here know that? These are the complexities that we talk about. This thing is very, very complex, and I would be hard pressed to say that anyone in this room is going to be 100% compliant 100% of the time with this healthcare law. Surround yourself with the experts. Get in front of it.
Trey?
Good advice.
Okay. Keith, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of really, the basics? What business owners should know at this point? Your best advice.
I really do believe that it's a team approach. I'm telling my clients to go to as many of these events as you can find. I don't think you can go to one event in 1 hour. We can't possibly touch everything, and I think that it would benefit you to have the perspective of different people, ask questions, and I keep saying this, but just be purposeful about it. I really believe, and I'm telling my clients to go to their insurance agent, whomever that might be, and ask them to conduct what I call the group medical calculator on your employee base, and just understand what kind of strategy should I be devising for my employees. And then sit down once you have that and then say, okay, can you help me map this and tell me what this is? What's it going to cost me if I offer a bronze plan? What's it going to cost me if I offer a silver plan? Lay this out for me and give me a summary of what is this likely to cost me so I can begin to evaluate what can I afford to do. Because this, you kind of have to understand where all this began. I mean, this all began as a way back after World War II, as a way for employers to attract and retain top talent. And I think that over time it's still gonna be the same. I mean, I think human capital is a very valuable asset, maybe the most valuable asset of any corporation. And I think that at the end of the day, if you just decide I'm not gonna offer this benefit anymore, your competitor may be offering it, and you'll look around and see all of your good people across the street. So it's a real dilemma. You can't just say, I'm not going to do it, because not everybody's going to play by those rules. So I think that you have to be proactive. I mean, we're saying the same thing a lot of different ways, but I think the common theme is be proactive, do not wait, get ahead of this, seek different opinions, learn all that you can. It has the potential to dramatically impact your company, and so it's important. And when we're doing financial work for clients, we often see that group medical is a very large line item on these companies' income statements. And by everything that we're hearing, it's going to become a larger component. So you just have to be proactive and don't wait.
All right, thank you. Before we open it up for audience questions, I did want to give the panel one more opportunity. If there was a question that possibly we didn't address, or a specific point that you really think needs to be relayed to small business owners, to the audience, I just want to give you the opportunity to comment on that.
Well, from a doctor's perspective and CEO running a small company, it is about the cost. I mean, the bottom line is, this is about money. And where are those costs? Where is the transparency in the system? Okay, and who is going to attempt to lower those costs by providing more cost-effective care? I know that it's not really the subject today, but the bottom line is, if we're going to affect how much this is going to cost us, we've got to affect the cost delivery system here. Okay? And I say this very apolitically. I'm going to make a shameless plug for my radio show, Doc Talk, on WGST 640 AM on Sunday mornings. And you'll be able to get it on the website too. And we're going to have guests on the program, and we're going to, hopefully some of you guys will participate. But it's not going to be about, health problems. You can ask any question except about health care. And we've got to find out, where is the money going? Because if you'll follow the money, then you will answer the question. Okay, and we got to find people who can deliver it. Kaiser would say, hey, they're delivering it. Do they have a model set up? Yeah, they do. I know they're here today. Shameless plug for you as well. But it is about that, and I have lots of opinions, and I'll shut up about it, but I'm glad to answer questions regarding the practice of medicine, the cost of medicine as well.
just to kind of add some context in regards to cost on this, and again, this is getting back to regardless what side of the fence, so to say, that you're on politically with this. I'll give you an example. The employer that I worked for previously, we had 80,000 employees, spending roughly $750 million a year for our healthcare program. Average cost on an employee was $11,000 a year. We had one employee's dependent child that cost us $1.2 million a year for a condition that he had. Okay? The pre-existing condition limitation has been taken out. And so when you start getting into the financials of this, understand the context. And again, I say this it doesn't matter what side of the fence you fall on the pre-existing condition piece. Where's the money coming? Who's going to pay for it on this? On the exchanges, if they go into the exchange and we don't have enough of the bodies to disperse the claim dollars, who's going to pay for it? Is it the taxpayers going to pay for it? Is it going to be you as a person in the exchange paying additional premiums? That's what it comes down to on the financial and business case of this. Okay, and it kind of spins onto that Dr. Gallup mentioned, is if you're going to look at this from a pure vacuum of cost, there's a prime example. So if a lot of pre-existings are going to fall into this program now, but we don't have the young, healthy individuals that come in with it, who's going to pay for the added cost?
Let me see that. This kind of gets to a bottom line issue for me. What is the cost? I mean, what do I have to pay the doctor for a particular service? Most people are probably familiar with your explanation of benefit. You'll get it. It'll say billed amount, and then you'll have the allowed amount. That's basically your managed network. That's the network rate that's been negotiated. And so right now we're in a managed care model. And I think, Doctor, you might have been getting at a direct care model. And there's actually a provision in the Affordable Care Act for that. It's not been popular, but it's called the direct primary care medical home. And essentially what that would be is you have your primary care physician, you have a direct relationship, they'll charge whatever money that relationship's going to cost, and you'll have a QHP, qualified health plan, put on top of that, and that could be offered through the exchange. I'm not aware of one in Georgia or any other state, but certainly getting creative in how to bring some market forces to what is the actual cost. You know, if Dr. A is doing the service for this, Dr. B is doing the service for that, you can make a decision. Now, a lot of this, you know, if I break my leg, I really can't do that, right? So there's a managed care, that's kind of the benefit of managed care. You know exactly how much it costs, but, you know, that's definitely an issue that was pointed out at the beginning of the Affordable Care Act. There's really nothing in there to bend the cost curve. And the cost curve is the actual amount of money it costs the reimbursement amounts for the doctors who's going to perform the service. So this is definitely an area that has not been put into the law, but it's something that, you know, creative minds can bring their thoughts to bear, and I think that's where real health reform as it relates to the cost needs to occur.
It's kind of funny that this comes up because in the last week I've had two separate meetings on how to bend the cost curve. Our company did a seminar. We called everybody in from across the country, and we did a seminar because one of the things that is coming up is the carriers are going to start having what's called a shrinking network. You're going to have a narrow network opportunity to buy a medical plan that right now there might be, let's say, 30 hospitals on that network plan, and under these new narrow networks, you might have 2, 3, 5 hospitals that you can go to, much narrower doctor choice. One of the things that was cited in this study was in this meeting was a large study done in the New England states, and there were about 10 slides of different medical conditions, but one of them that just kind of stuck out in my head, I don't know why, was a C-section. And it was over 30 different hospitals, or 35 different hospitals. There was a price variance of $18,000 to $33,000 for a C-section. Okay, now, is the $33,000 C-section better than an $18,000 C-section? No, it's a C-section. Okay, now, but they went deeper and said, all right, of all these hospitals at the various prices, who is the best at the C-section, meaning less associated medical problems, whatever. Dr. Gallup can probably address that better than I can. But the best C-section was, I think, at the $23,000 to $24,000 mark. They had fewer problems associated with that one particular hospital, and there were 3 particular hospitals that were just better overall at that. And the insurance company that was brought in to review this said if we could eliminate all those other hospitals, just use those 3, we could knock premium costs down 35%. 35%. So if you think about that, that's a significant number. Now, here's the real probably tough question for you as an employer. Do you want to offer that to your employees? Hey, employees, you only get to go to 2 hospitals in Atlanta. That's going to be a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation. We're thinking you're going to have to offer that as an option with multiple carriers or multiple plans. But that's what it's about. That's about the only way that we can bend the curve now is better, more efficient doctors. It doesn't mean because you're either less expensive or more expensive, you're better. It's the better doctor that does it, and then they don't have a redo. And you've already seen 2 insurance carriers start to rank doctors in hospitals. And one statistic I saw was if you were a 0-star doctor in the country, a 0-star doctor with 1 insurance company versus a 2-star doctor, I think you were 30% more likely to have a redo on a triple bypass. Think about that. I'm going to a 2-star doctor. So, interesting how this is all coming up at this point.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead. Dr. Gallup? Yeah, go ahead. We have about 5 minutes
hard
before.
For me not to go there. First of all, there's a great article I really liked written by Stephen Brill, I think his name, called Bitter Pill. Anybody read that in Time Magazine? It's interesting, and I do appreciate you referring to me as Doc. It's kind of a burden right now in what I'm trying to do. But I would say in defense of docs, we've seen our reimbursement, go down. So where is the money? Where is it going? Anybody heard of a IRS 990 form? Who knows what that is? Anybody? Okay. Tell us, what is a 990 form?
A 990 form is a tax return for a nonprofit.
And would hospitals file these?
It depends.
If they're a nonprofit hospital, would they file these?
Yes, you would hope.
Yeah, well, they do, right? They're required to by the IRS.
That's right.
And so if you want to see money, you can go to globalstar.com. You can pull down the 990 forms for our local hospitals who are nonprofits, okay? And you can see the profit margins on which they do not pay taxes, okay? The problem is any physician practice that is involved with hospitals see costs go up. So cost containment would be in lowering them. So when you talk about C-sections, right? You're about to have a baby. First of all, we men have no right to comment on C-sections. You have my advice to you.
I just remembered that one. I didn't say C-section, I said knee section, knee operation.
Because we would say we want in that line, but I'm telling you, the women, they want their choices, and it's an emergent procedure. But your point is very valid. Why do they cost so much and why do they vary? Well, that's a big cost component, okay, is determining where that cost is delivered, So I think, but listen, there are a lot of upsides here, right? The economy is going to do great from this. You've got consultants, who are going to be involved in this, soft cost providers. There's always a silver lining here, right? Or at least we'll try to find one, right? I don't think we have those answers, but we're going to develop those answers over time. But you follow the money. Go look up those 990 forms. It's going to make everybody very uncomfortable, I promise you. And they're public information. It'll be very interesting to see where the money goes.
Dr. Gallups, thank you. And we do want to open it up to questions from the audience. Here's your opportunity. Hopefully you've had a chance to jot down some questions while the panelists answered. the questions. Anyone, just raise your hand and I'll come to you with the microphone. What's your question, sir?
Yeah, I can yell it out. Trey, what are the designations for company size? You mentioned 250 was small, but for ERISA claims, I mean, what is the breakdown in Georgia going to be Jan 1?
No, the Jan 1, it's 2 to 50, so 2-50 for rating purposes. In the Affordable Care Act, essentially how this was set up is they came in, they defined small business as 1 to 100 employees. But in the Affordable Care Act was a provision that allowed states to retain their state definition, which is basically a HIPAA definition, 2 to 50. And many states opted to do that. Georgia did. So for rating purposes, the small group will be 2 to 50, meaning that essential health benefits applies to policies that are issued in the area of small group as defined at 2 to 50. The rating restrictions. So that's essentially what the Affordable Care Act requires. I think ERISA is above 100 employees, I think, is when you start having to report on the 5,500. I didn't mention earlier, there is another option for small employers to band together a MIWA, multiple employer welfare arrangement, and you would report up on an M1. But it's 2 to 50 is the rating purposes, but for all other purposes under the ACA, and there's I don't think there's really many that are that I would call relevant to our conversation today, but it would be 1 to 100, and the small employer definition of 1 to 100 will basically default in 2016 and preempt the state definition.
Any other questions?
I had one of Keith.
Okay.
But Keith, you mentioned there was a 50% tax rate for companies under 25 employees. That only works if it's a C Corp, right? If it's an LLC and it can flow through to the partners, that's just simply less money that flows through.
That's a good question. No, my understanding is that tax credit is available for just small employers. I'm not aware that there's some carve out for C Corps, because very often small employers are not C Corps; they're flow through entities.
Right.
So that wouldn't work for the vast majority of small employers. I mean, that would.
There's no benefit.
There's no benefit. So I don't see how that would work.
All right, we have a question in the back here.
Thank you. From both the business owner's perspective and from the physician's perspective, it seems that the only way to really bend that cost curve is to get America healthier. And I'm not trying to be political here. But is there incentives for business owners to help their employees maintain good health? And from a physician's point of view, is there incentive to help your patients get healthier in the ACA?
From the business point of view, the short answer is yes, there are incentives out there. I think you're going to see, come 2014, a much heavier emphasis on wellness programs. I'll do the shameless plug and say Humana has a great program, Vitality. This tackles a lot of the wellness pieces out there. So a lot of people probably in this room are familiar with the tobacco cessation type programs. You're going to start seeing other programs pop up that concentrate on other areas of wellness that are more of an outcomes based. So, having HRAs or health risk assessments done, companies are going to start doing that to where you need to fall within certain ranges on cholesterol, on your BMI, hip to waist ratio, things to that nature. Now then, when companies do start getting into the wellness arena, number one, in the healthcare law right now, starting 2014, there can be a 50% premium differential that you can do in regards to credits for those that qualify for for certain outcomes on the wellness program. So if they meet the standards, you can credit their premiums that they would pay up to 50% in reduction. One of the key pieces when you do start deviling in the wellness programs, you're going to be subjected to GINA. which is Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. And you need to make sure that you're following those guidelines there. So again, it gets back into that scenario of this is a lot more devil's in the detail scenario. But from a business perspective, yes, you're going to see a lot more emphasis on wellness programs that come into play because the social and behavioral issues are going to be a lot more involved in helping to try to bend that curve, since we are going to more of a community rating, and some of the factors that were able to help in cost savings before are no longer there.
All right, I think we had a question at this table here, and then I will get to that side right there.
Yes, the tax credits, do they disappear after a certain number of years, and don't you have to provide a minimum level of, you can't do the bronze, for instance, to get the tax credit, you need to provide a certain coverage?
The phase out is there's a phase out over time, and the phase out for once you get above 25 employees, you're no longer allowed the credit. I mean, there's a phase out. So yes, the credit's not forever.
After 2 years?
I believe that's correct. 2 years. That's right.
And silver plan?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a question at this table? Two questions. What are the 4 counties that are going to require the translation services? And then my second question, I manage an OB practice, so C-sections are very good for us. Is it true that maternity care is going to be a required covered benefit among the 4 levels of plans? Do we know that yet?
I set myself up for the 4 counties question. I knew that was coming to bite. Let me back up and first define that again, okay? So the summary benefit of coverage, which are these 4-page documents that companies need to be making readily available to their employees, that is in place, has been in place, okay? If you have a single employee who resides in a county that has a 10% threshold of Spanish, Chinese, Navajo, or Tagalog linguistics, okay, you've got to provide that document in those languages upon request, okay? The 4 counties in Georgia, you've got Atkinson County, which is between Tifton and Waycross. You've got Eccles County, which is down close to Valdosta. Close to home, you've got Hall County. And then you've also got Whitfield County, which is up close to the Dalton area. Okay, so those are the 4 counties in Georgia. Now, if you've got employees in other states, again, you can go onto the CMS website. Trying to find that's going to be difficult, I would say, but they've got the linguistics map per county, so you'll know on each state what counties that's applicable to.
I just want to say I'm not for or against cesarean sections. I was just.
First, a comment that Affordable Care Act, the name itself is an oxymoron because the costs go up for all businesses and individuals. So this blows my mind. But how does, my question is, how does this affect Medicare patients and their premiums?
To start with, there was Medicare supplemental coverage. There used to be no cost share. There's going to be some cost share, so that's one thing. Medicare is interesting. This is where I think, and doctors and particularly hospitals can speak to this, but the reimbursement, the way that reimbursements have been done, they're attempting to change that. And so, your quality metrics and things like that are going to come into play as far as the reimbursement. So I think they call it an episode of care. And so, for instance, if you perform a service, but you have to have a readmission, that could affect your reimbursement. There's soft measures about was it clean, things like that will actually have an effect on the reimbursement. And of course, in Medicare, we have what are called the accountable care organizations. It's a model that, frankly, it looks a lot like an old staff model HMO. But what it is the accredited accountable care organizations, and there's several out there will deal with when you have a broken hip. The way it's done is they'll give a certain amount of money Medicare for the episode of care, and hopefully the ACO takes care of it and performs the service, does it. This is supposed to bring efficiency and bend the cost curve a little bit. But then you get the measures of how effective it was. You know, did they have to get readmitted and all these other things. So there's definitely a few things with Medicare that are going to affect particularly the providers, and a few things that are going to affect the Medicare eligible people. Certainly Medicare Advantage is something that probably is going to change a bit in the future because the reimbursements there are being affected as well, or basically the amount of money that Medicare pays over the Medicare Advantage company that gives you a managed care program. So there's a lot of things in there, some of which are may or may not survive, years down the road. We'll have to see how it is in practice. But, I'll make a prediction here. The Affordable Care Act, as we see it in 2014, will change. And it's going to change because of how it rolls out. And, some things are not going to yield the results that the feds thought they would. They have a great plan. We'll see what it is in practice. But I think there's definitely flaws that are showing up now and will continue to. So that's my speech on that.
Will COBRA still be in effect?
Yeah. But the certificate of credible coverage, anybody familiar with that? Essentially, that's going to become something that's not all that relevant after 2014. What a certificate of credible coverage is I have major medical coverage and I haven't been without it for 63 days. And so I can come on to a group plan and not get an exclusion for a pre-existing condition, which under the old rules you could get up to 2 years. But that's gone. After 2014, basically employer plans only have waiting periods of up to 90 days. And that's pretty restricted.
So we want to try and get to as many questions as we can. Ma'am, did you have a question?
Yes, this is very informative. Thank you. I work for Atlanta Medical Center, so I have a vested interest in the consumer side of this. So if it's not too off topic, could you explain what an exchange is, who is eligible for an exchange, and how do people sign up for it?
Go for it.
I'll take it. All right. Realize this. People keep talking about Obamacare, some form of insurance. It's not. It's insurance reform is what it is, not a form of insurance. And an exchange is merely a website where you can log on and buy insurance. Buy Obama insurance? No, not buy Obama insurance. Buy insurance. Blue Cross insurance, Humana insurance, whatever insurance company is going to be on the exchange. Not every insurance company is going to be on the exchange. There's going to be a limited number of them. But it's merely a website where you'll be able to go, you'll be able to log in your information, and you'll get a quote. And you can get a quote for a bronze plan, silver plan, gold, platinum. Okay, whatever is going to be available on the exchange. So it is literally as simple as that. It is merely a website. You'll be able to do that for individual insurance, and then you're going to be able to do that on the shop insurance if they get that up and running eventually. Okay, and that's group insurance for small groups. Healthcare.gov. Healthcare.gov is the website. I will put a little side note on there. Every insurance agent had to go on to the website and do about 6 or 8 hours of continuing ed, take an exam, confirm that we knew enough about it. And one of the interesting things I saw when I was on that, literally every single line on the web page ran behind a picture. They put clip art all over the website so it would be more graphically interesting, and literally the word would run behind the picture and you wouldn't be able to see it. So be interesting to see how the website works for everybody.
We have another question.
Yes, thank you. In talking to a few risk advisors, they were mentioning on the wellness program and the requirement for employees under the Act, under PHI, that if you don't sign up for that program, that you're going to pay a penalty as an employee. Can somebody expand on that if you're knowledgeable in that arena, please?
I'm not familiar that there's a penalty. Whenever a company incorporates a wellness program, it's going to be more of a credit for those on the outcomes-based wellness programs. Essentially, you can attach to that a credit to employees that quote-unquote pass and fall within those means. I'm not familiar with a penalty that's associated. Now, the spin on it may be, instead of it being looked at as a credit, it may be we're considering it a penalty to our employees that don't. For instance, the tobacco, non-tobacco issue. So when you put in tobacco differentials on your premiums, you may set the base rate for the non-tobacco and then just say, essentially, we're doing a surcharge for the tobacco users.
Okay, we have another question.
Follow up to the exchanges and the reimbursement that they give, the insurance plans on the exchanges, the reimbursement that they give to hospitals and physicians. Does that reimbursement look more like, say, a really good Cigna plan, or does it look like Medicaid? Anybody have any insight into that?
So, just your standard QHP. You buy a QHP on the exchange, what does the network look like? Is that a network reimbursement?
Here's the larger question, is right now a lot of physicians don't pay for Medicaid. So if we're going to have millions of people signing up on these exchanges, my question is the reimbursement to these physicians going to look more like Medicaid? Is that going to exacerbate the upcoming physician shortage? Or is it going to be really good insurance like Cigna where physicians will, yeah,
I'll go real quick, but I mean, I think it's simple economics. You're bringing in millions of people who have heretofore not been insured, and you're not increasing the number of doctors out there overnight. And so that's going to put pressure. I would argue that if we take the supply-demand curve seriously, that would naturally put the supplier in a bit better position. And I'll let the doctor handle that one.
I think that's a very germane question for all of this, because I got to tell you, I'm a patient. I go see doctors, and I pay them, right? I want the best I can get, and if I can pay that, then I do that. You're going to be in charge of that. Initially, nothing is going to change. I mean, you're going to proceed just like you are now, and then it's going to take innovations to change it. For example, I'm working with the major insurers now. They're looking at me as the only provider for ENT services, potentially, for bronze and silver. That's a lot of talk, I know. Why would they do that? Because I can provide that service, high quality, most cost efficiently, than any other ENT group. Okay? Why? Because we have all the ancillaries. We have, our CT scans are a seventh of the hospitals, right? Our surgery, outpatient surgery, all in is half to one-fifth to one-half of what you pay the hospital, and it's high quality. So, but these are the innovations that are coming, and they're going to be negotiated on a free market basis. Who can provide the high quality at low cost, and they've been trying to do that. But here's another silver lining to what's happening now is that everybody's waking up. You're going to be in charge of how much you pay the hospital, the doctor, and those that can do it better, make a better experience for the patient, are going to be winners. So there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of good, if you will, American capitalism in that, hey, who can provide that service? Is it Walmart? Is it Neiman Marcus? What do you want it to be? For us at the ENT Institute, we do 6% charitable care now. We're probably going to get paid for it. Now, silver lining, we got to change state regs because we're required to give it. And then everybody's going to have it. So how can I beat my thresholds, right? A lot of problems with the law. We take Medicaid, we're trying to negotiate with the state of Georgia now to lower the Medicaid cost to all of you for taking care of these children on Medicaid. Putting tubes in the ears and tonsillectomies when they're needed, and only when they're needed, because they have to be referred to us to have those things done. And that's what it's going to take, and that's when you're going to see transformation over the next several years. But initially, I don't think you're going to have to worry about it.
I want to get to another question.
Yeah, I represent the fitness industry. Typically, as a personal trainer, we're independent contractors, but I also represent a personal training international association that provides certifications to all the other trainers. So, is it to our advantage to be able to as a group, be able to offer insurance for all those trainers that get certifications through the group, through the association? Is it going to be to our advantage to get that kind of insurance? Or is it better to just do it individually?
One of the things that Trey has mentioned, I mean, the true associations are going to be few and far between. I'm sure Eric up here, we've had several associations statewide, nationally, that have approached us saying, how can we help our members? And at the end of the day, they're not true associations, okay? If they can fall within the narrow guidelines there, is there an economy of scale, which is what you're getting to leverage? I think, yes, there is. There is an economy of scale there. But again, it's getting into that true association piece. The majority of associations out there don't qualify for. So, I've got one in particular that I deal with here in Georgia. I mean, ERISA has still set the guidelines of it is at the employer level that we're going to determine. Now, then, potentially, if you get the association again and they qualify, yes, they can aggregate up somewhat economies of scale, but for the most part, there's not going to be an advantage there. For the most part, most associations out there are not true associations defined by the Department of Insurance and under ERISA. And so you're not going to be able to get that economy of scale that you're asking.
The best option for independent contractors, or for the small mom and pop, personal training facilities or whatever, they have like 5 employees or less. What's going to be the best?
Well, again, you're looking at this may be a benefit on the exchange scenario with the subsidies there. I mean, if you've got a smaller organization that does not have the capital to invest in a true benefits program for their employees, then there's other options, other pieces of the compensation package too that employers can look at to give incentives to employees. Again, we've mentioned there may be a lack of a tax advantage if you do that, but that's an option. And so for the individual up under that company umbrella, again, you've got the exchanges where there are potential subsidies there. So that may work to the advantage of those individuals there. That may be a scenario that the exchanges are a much better option.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great presentation. Really, really appreciate it. I have a question. I'm a naturopath, and there are a lot of practitioners like herbalists and so forth who work in healthcare but aren't necessarily in the system. It's not like a concierge where you could be in and you ought to be out. What's going to happen to practitioners like us in this scenario?
I think you've stumped the panel.
I think generally, I mean, if you're operating within the scope of your license, and you're saying that you can't get into a managed care network, I mean,
There are no licenses for a lot of practitioners like myself, herbalists, naturopaths. Only 17 states in the U.S. license us, and Georgia's not one.
I think in California, acupuncture made it into the essential health benefits. I think that if it's part of, if it's part of the, the benefit you're providing under a plan, you have to have people who provide it. So I think it kind of would, if a plan's doing that, and I don't offhand, I don't think any of that would make it into the essential health benefits, but I don't think that, an insurer would have to enter into, for instance, get you into a network or someone like you similarly situated.
So people could still just pay out of pocket, go see someone like myself,
Sure.
And not have, okay. Thanks.
Okay, we have another question.
Hello, I work for a medical staffing company, and recently I've had clients ask me questions such as, if they use our contractors, will they get credit, the tax credit? I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Again, that goes up under the employer umbrella. So if you are the true employer of those employees, you are the one that benefits from the potential tax credits and or penalties. If you are outsourcing them to a medical facility or practice, that particular practice will not have the advantage of those tax credits. Now again, you get under those Taft-Hartley plans, the MEWAs, and some of that scenario. So if you've got, like for instance, with Georgia Pacific manufacturing firm, they're paying into a Taft-Hartley plan. Georgia Pacific doesn't get to use that credit and/or penalties. It's the actual plan itself that has to deal with the credit/penalties that may or may not apply to them.
Okay. And then does it go the same thing for 1099 and W-2, or we only get the credit and we're responsible for the W-2?
W-2s, the 1099 are independent contractors. And that's going to be an area that's going to be really looked at and get some scrutiny more than it has before. So that's an area, if you're dealing in a lot of 1099s, I would be very cautious and reassess, how much control do you have over those 1099 employees, and will they be truly looked at as 1099 going forward, or do they actually fall as a quote-unquote W-2 employee?
We have time for one more quick question. Someone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question will head up here. We thank you for your patience as things are kind of wrapping up. We're almost at 10 o'clock. Yes, ma'am.
I am an HR professional, and I'm interested in your commentary about grandfathered plans. Can you give me a brief overview of how we maintain that?
I haven't seen a grandfathered plan in a year. If you have a grandfathered plan, that means you have not functionally changed your plan to any great extent since the law was signed into play. I haven't run across a grandfathered plan in ages. Obviously you must still have one. I'd say your time is short. It's a matter of time before the carrier forces your hand on that. So then you're going to be pulled into the ACA.
You've got a grandfathered plan, it sounds like, and you're aware of what the parameters are to keep that. Yes, no. Let me. I had a feeling we were going to get this question. So here's the specifics. Okay, so the healthcare law was passed March 23rd of 2010. Okay, that was your benchmark date. From that date, essentially your plan cannot have an increase in your percentage cost share. So co-insurance levels, if anybody's familiar with that, 80%. Okay, you can't have an increase in that. You can't have a 15% increase plus medical inflation on any of your fixed dollar costs, so your copays, your deductibles. You can't have a 5% reduction proportionately in an employer contributions to that plan. Outside of that, you have to give out annual notifications to your employees that you still qualify as a grandfathered status, okay? To Eric's point, and I agree wholeheartedly, the grandfathered plans are going to become fewer and fewer and far between, because essentially the way that they operate, the cost on those premiums, you're looking at a pool of employees that are essentially going to disappear. Employers, as the grandfather plans disappear, you're going to have a smaller pool. Premiums are going to increase. They're typically richer benefit plans, and so you're going to be facing substantially increased premiums. And then you've got the 2018 issue that you're going to have to face on the Cadillac plans too.
Panelists, thank you so much. We promised to wrap this up by 10 o'clock. I think we came pretty close to that. We appreciate your expertise and your time answering all the questions. And audience, thank you so much. Clearly, we would need more than just a couple of hours for all of us to be crystal clear on what's about to happen in only a matter of months. But thank you so much for joining us this morning for breakfast. And I want to turn it over to Sherry Adair, who has a couple of comments that she would like to make.
I just wanted to say thank all of you for coming out this morning. I want to thank our panelists again, and Tracye Hutchins, you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. You've heard that everyone say that it takes a team. You have a great team of experts here. If you guys have a couple of minutes, I encourage you to speak to them. And also, we have Humana, Kaiser Permanente, the medical staffing service. Please use the resources in the room until these guys leave. And again, thank you so much for coming.